All right. Recorded August 13th, 2026. Good afternoon, Gary. Good afternoon, Franklin. Good afternoon, Rodney. And also good afternoon to our distinguished guest, Mona. How's everyone doing?
Doing all right.
Doing better now that I'm here with you guys.
Oh, yeah. Well,
good answer.
You're too generous and kind. You should be a politician. Shaking babies and kissing hands. There you go.
There's a future.
There's a future. We'll see. It pays better. If you're the right type of politician, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say, no comment.
Yeah. So, we are in this dog days of summer. If you are a sports fan, and the only thing that's going on seems to be baseball, but now football is raised its ugly head again, and it seems like football is actually 24/7, 365. It really doesn't really go away.
They've turned it into an all-year sport, despite the fact that people only play for a short amount of time. It's impressive, but I mean, you got years of footage. They've got the ESPN has figured out how to turn everything into a multi-hour series. I'll probably get my own 30 for 30 pretty soon, or whatever they call it. But yeah,
30 for 30 is the thing. So let's do the rundown. I mean, we it might have been, I'm looking at my calendar, it might have been a little bit between the last show, but for some reason we've gotten super popular again, and people keep pinging us like, hey man, you guys need to go back to once a week rather than once every 2 weeks. But we're somebody said I just wrote my magic about you'll have a package. All right, I'm all good about that. We'll have a show next week, and then someone's already pinged me. We'll have a show after that, and then someone thinks that we'll have a show after that. So I don't know. It's the good publicity, just word of mouth, organic, publicity.
People need security insights today, Edward. People need it. They want security insights now more than ever. That's what it's about. That's why I think they're here.
That's the thing. We were supposed to all wear our security insight shirts today, but I'll make sure, Gary, I forgot to put yours in the mail. It's sitting on the floor. Franklin has his.
Nice.
Right.
I'm wearing the briefs.
You wearing the briefs? Oh yeah, me too. I'm wearing the socks. The security insight socks. And Mona, I would definitely put you a shirt in the mail. I think
I would love that. I would totally wear it.
So let's do the quick rundown. We do this a little bit different. We used to put our guests in the green room, but I think they like being part of the banter and being able to, insert their highly opinionated facts. But let's start with you, Gary. How you doing, man? What did you break this week? What did you learn? Who did you make friends with, and who did you make a mortal enemy with?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say happy National Left-Handers Day for all the other lefties out there in the world.
That explains a lot.
Wow. I wondered why I couldn't open the door today.
I know, right?
It was the knob was on the wrong side.
Yeah, I kept trying to tighten the screw down, and it wouldn't go right. I'm like,
I know.
What's going on? All right. So what did you think?
Spending a lot of time with Agent 365.
Oh, cool.
Nice thing about that is get to work with the different groups at my company, because it basically crosses almost every department that we have.
Same. Actually, I feel like it has been maybe unintended side effect of Agent 365, or maybe it's on purpose, but I found a lot of new friends in application modernization these days. I'm so popular all of a sudden. I never thought that they would care about exposure management, but here we are. It turns out that there's a whole version of exposure management that just has to do with software stuff. I've been doing a lot of fun vibe coding of different scenarios to try to help people understand why I need agentic governance. And maybe if you guys are good, I'll show you what it's like later on. It's been a really fun time to be doing security stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It is refreshing. Yeah. Franklin, what about you, sir?
I've been on vacation. I'm here to hear about Defcon and Black Hat, all the exciting AI news.
Well, let me give you this. We want to make sure we give our distinguished guests. I say distinguished, like I put her out.
Extinguished.
Our distinguished guest. Let's let's do that, and I do that. But Rodney,
You could literally cover Black Hat and DEF CON in 5 minutes. So
I'm about to cover in 5 minutes. That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Remember, listeners, the opinions and our words do not reflect the opinions of my employer. I am a gracious and humble and appreciative employee of Microsoft. So let me start with that. I had the opportunity to attend Black Hat and DEF CON, and it's been a while since I attended either. And this is the first time I thought about it that I attended both at the same time. I either did one or the other. The one thing that I did see, and it was a stark contrast, that's not only totally two different conferences, it's totally two different genres and personalities and just everything. Because I'll leave it at this. There's nothing bad about either one, because there's the ability to learn and get better and see something in anything that you do if you look for it that way. But let me put it this way. Black Hat is very much so a trade conference. Yep. And this time it was hugely obvious that everybody wanted to be the person. Let me flip it. You could not be the person that didn't have AI, right? And everybody wanted to say we AI this, AI that, AI this, AI that. Come over here, we do it. I found myself starting to the very fringes of the trade floor, and I tend to do this when I travel. I like to work the outside of a town center of any country or city I'm in and work myself to the middle, because the middle generally has all the tourist attractions. And that was the same thing in this. The big boys were in the middle. Microsoft, Google, this and that and everything. But the little French companies on the outside. I found that everybody had an AI talk. And I think, Rod, you and I talked about it. I decided not to go in as a practitioner and a person that wanted to be wild by the coolness and look at that. I went in, I deliberately say, I am an investor and I have $10 million in my pocket. Talk me out of it. And nobody talked me out of my money, right? I didn't see anything that was novel, right? Yeah. You're saying you're doing it, but where's the moat, right? Where is that where your technology is either so far advanced or so hard to duplicate, or you're creating so much of a new industry or it's a current industry, differentiator that says, I'll give you my money. And then I see that. I did see some things that do drink in the Kool-Aid of the major hyperscalers. There is something to be said about inheriting and utilizing a platform of minimizing your management and administrative overhead. Microsoft, AWS, GCP, Alibaba, or whatever it may be, because there's one throat to choke and everything is there. But you find yourself you adopt the inherent risk of a singularity in your approach, but in itself, it makes the ability to troubleshoot and everything else there. A lot of the companies can't compete with these hyperscalers. So they are either we play friendly with, we augment, we do this, we do that, we sit on top, we fill the gaps, which is something I heard all the time. We fill the gap.
Yeah.
It seemed like everybody was pitching to get someone to buy them. Right?
Yes. Yeah, please buy my fancy middleware. Yes, my very important fancy middleware.
I had one. Speaking of that, I had one booth that I actually went to, and they're like, "Oh, they saw my badge. Oh, you're with Microsoft." And literally, first words out of their mouth, "Microsoft should buy us." I'm like, "Oh."
I have 4 people.
I'll get my credit card out right now.
They're like, "Hey, do you what do you do at my?" Well, I didn't go up under the Microsoft moniker. I went up under my personal. Microsoft did not pay for my trip. This is Edward wanting to go because I didn't have any customers there. So there's no return on investment that I could use just to, validate or substantiate my desire to go. So I just went on my own. It's fine. And I had the freedom to not man a booth, have to go ahead and do all this other stuff. Now, with that being said, there were some companies that were actually very interesting. And it's that thing, if I mention their name, people come out, well, you excluded this and Ed, you couldn't have evaluated all these companies. But I'm going to say what I'm going to say. 3 companies. 10x AI, very interesting. The way they overlay sits on top of your security platform of choice, whether it sits on top of Google or Azure or Defender. I didn't really see a play for AWS. Another was a company called Int AI, which is a cyber company, and a lot of ex-Microsoft people are there, and a lot of risk IQ. And I like the things that they were trying to parlay that they can do. Until I see it in action, you can't do it. You're talking about it. And then another one called Atomon, which was another IT company, and they're all in the later. They're like sister partner companies. They're doing these things together. And so I'll end this and hand the floor over to Rod, who was there. That this is the thing that I would take away from it. A lot of those companies had sister companies or brother companies or partner companies, meaning they did not have partnerships in a manner that we are used to. Let's say Capgemini is an official Microsoft partner. That they chose to pool their resources to be able to build this conglomerate, so that they all pull each other. Hey, I'm not a good fit, but you should check out this company. I heard more people say, "Go check out this company." Right? So it looks like people are saying, "Hey, if one of us makes it, we all make it." It reminded me of when I used to be at a company and we were all put into the lottery pool, and some person would go out and buy the lottery tickets for everybody. If you won, you won. All right. So we did it. That's what it seemed like. Now, really quick, 60 seconds. I walked into Defcon. I immediately made sure my phone was off. No laptops were powered up, because that's a different demographic. And you know when you're the dumbest man in the room, because everybody else has these little things circling their head and you can see their brains. I'm like, well, you doing what? I was afraid to sort of sit down and talk, because I was listening to some of the conversations. I took a lot picking contest, came in fourth, actually not too bad. You know, we say something simplistic like man in the middle attack. I saw something like, what is this? It was everything. But the thing that I noticed, there were no villages or major presentations that talked about hacking AI. There were two whole courses. That seemed I can't tell if it was taboo or not, but there wasn't a whole lot. And I went through the catalog that they give you. Where's my camera? That they give you at DEF CON. So I went through and just say, okay, maybe I missed a session. I went through it, and there were maybe two. And it was like, I went to the Loctopus competition. There was something about maybe large language models do, but mal skill, hands-on natural language malware and agent AI system. It wasn't as many as I thought it was going to be about finding exploits and doing that in AI. And the reason I think it's not because they don't exist. It's like they were keeping it close to the vest. Nobody wanted to get their proprietary way of compromising agents and models. And that was very interesting. But it was some smart folks there. And I think that the show is going to be probably one of the more popular shows, because everybody wanted to stop and take a picture of me and my shirt, because on the back of the front of the shirt it said Microsoft. It said Security Insights Podcast, and on the back it had Steel Team 6. Everybody thought it was like that. That's pretty clever. And then in front of my shirt said like extra salty. Rod saw me. I was extra salty that day. So that's my thing. Rod, what was yours?
I'm pretty sure you covered it all, because I was, obviously there for Microsoft. We had a little community area in the booth where we had sessions and other things, some AMAs, some round tables and things like that, which went pretty well. I think it's a third-party conference. So to be honest, I think Microsoft needs to show up a little bit differently, maybe even more differently than we did this year, but we're talking about that already. I think we could have been a lot more successful because Black Hat is just literally architected differently. I would surmise that 50% of the people that attended Black Hat never came to the expo after the first night, and like probably a large majority of them never did anyway, because the majority of the vendors, what they would do, if you walked the hotel walkway from the hotels to the conference center at Mandalay Bay, every single restaurant and little meeting place was rented out all day long. And so they would literally have meetings and sessions in these restaurants. And as you walk by, you can hear them talking and making their pitches and stuff. And I thought that was actually pretty neat. In that, that's where to me, honestly, we're at Black Hat where the activity happened. That's where the conversations happen. That's where the learning happened. That's where people actually talked about their stuff. The booths, anybody that invested heavily and that was their sole source of connecting with customers were probably kind of off base a little bit. There were even a couple vendors there that they didn't even have booths on the floor. They just rented suites, some of the large suites, and just invited customers up there, to goof off and have fun. So I thought that was pretty neat. Like I said, it's architected differently. We're just going to have to take some learning from that and do a little bit different next year.
I noticed that at like RSA and some of the other big ones too, is like a lot more, restaurants, a lot more suites, and way less trying to like do the weird little booths on the floor or feeling constrained to being actually in the expo center themselves. And I actually kind of appreciated the vibe. It was a little bit more spread out, and didn't feel like you were in Sardine City.
I love that. I thought that was a great idea. I mean, I don't think expos are ever going to go away, but there is kind of expo fatigue at some point. If you've been to one expo, you've literally been in them all. I don't care what they're talking about or what the topic is. It's all the same.
Unless they've gamified it or there's like something fun to do. Like I loved what Microsoft had, I think it was maybe Build last year, or maybe it was Ignite, where you could do like the simulation, kind of activity, and it kind of was more fun, right? More engaging. But I definitely feel like the days of like showing up with brochures and a bowl of candy, just doesn't quite do it anymore. And a lot of folks, I feel like in marketing are like, I can't exactly explain the ROI, but we all feel like we still need to do this and we don't know why. But I feel like, I see a lot more people doing fun things like a chef event or like, other sorts of innovative things to try to get people's attention.
And I think Rob made a great point. It was in plain sight, but you're right. Every walk, every restaurant, every little thing inside that thing had a sponsored somebody that would get you in, and that they found that I'm going to capture your badge better when I offer you free beer than they're sitting you on the floor. Let me tell you the thing that I did see, and I thought it was me, but I saw everybody. People were offering these little trinkets that they bought off whatever cheap for a thing, and somebody said, "Do you want a Lego?" No. Would you like a hat? No. Hey, we're giving away these spinners. No. People like, I don't want to take any more junk home. I have enough stuff. Now, the sticker game at Defcon, oh my God, I got some great stickers over there. I'm like, these are cool to do. But it's a trade show. And there's a definite, it felt like, hey, someone's walking around with the sign round 2 over at Black Hat. But when you went over to Defcon, it was deadly ass serious about what was, and they were talking stuff. Oh, one last thing. At Defcon, what threw me off at first, it was so quiet. All the villagers were doing their sessions. It was so quiet. Like they did the whole thing where when you walk in, you check in, you get a headset. And so you only heard the guy talking through your headset, like these silent parties, these things that you see. I thought that was really cool. There were multiple sessions going on in an open floor, but it was so quiet because when you signed up, you got your own headset, and then the person talking to you talk to it. This is something they stole from entertainment. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That way you could walk over, and then they had a teleprompter or something as the guy taught. If you were interested, you look and say what you were saying, like, oh, that's cool. So you walked over, eat, and they gave you a thing. You sit down and just listen to them. So there was no distraction around you. And that I was like, I like that. That's really cool to be able to do sessions that way. But hey, we got to get you on here.
Edward, you're talking about the lock pick competition.
Yeah.
This is the actual rook from one of the lockpick competitions from DEF CON.
Oh, yeah.
Believe it or not.
Old school.
Check that out.
Look at that. It was something else that they had. It looked like it was an arm wrestling contest. I was like, what are we doing here, right? But let's get into the meat of the title of the podcast. If everybody's here, Mona, thank you so much. And the reason I wanted you on is because with the series of events that have happened, and I'll let you do a complete readout to build up your story to get to, but I asked you to come on and talk about, two things. Microsoft initiative around M-, their project perception, and no short name for the automatic remediation, which is called MAA-Flash-Cyber- whatever it may be.
MAI Cyber Flash 1.
Yeah, that thing right there. And when I read your post on LinkedIn, I'm like, finally, someone who's just state the facts, right? Rather than trying to state, this is why you need us, and I can only solve your problem. So you've been a friend of the show. I think this is probably your 5th time coming on. Maybe I'll go back and count if we count the Christmas part.
No, I think maybe 3rd, 2nd. I think it's maybe the 2nd. Right?
I think you're
I don't
hitting
think I've done
Steve
any
Martin
podcasts.
level, like on SNL or something.
Yeah, I
just want to be Madonna. I almost only put my first name on here, and I was like, no, I probably should still be Mona Ghadiri. But
I call you Mona
Monday.
G-Heezy. So please, for our listeners who don't know who you are and who do not recognize your divinity and your celebrity in the realm of cybersecurity,
Very good.
inform them who you are so they may pay tribute and sacrifice to the great.
Oh no, Mother of Dragons. No, my name is Mona Ghadiri. I've been a long believer in kind of cybersecurity being something that's associated with other things. But yeah, I've been doing this whole managed security world thing because I just have always believed we just don't have enough people, and trying to train people is a great idea, but figuring out how to scale more people, what they can do better is exactly what I want to do and what I've been trying to do for my entire career. So I've been a Microsoft MVP now for, I think this is my fourth to 5th year. And it's been an amazing experience for me. It's been formative in so many ways. But yeah, most lately I've been at Capgemini, where I've been really able to focus on building an AI-powered SOC, thinking about agentic security, and thinking about what happens when we get to these worlds where there's reds and blues and greens and whatever other colors you decide, to introduce into this world. And what I've been thinking about is, how do we figure out what new artifacts need to exist, or new ways to think about data that we haven't had before. These are things like lineage. How can you prove that from the time something was deployed to when it changed and who had the identity and whatever, and then 5 months go by, and then somebody says, okay, it's time for our NIST assurance review, and you're like, well, I have the attestation records from when we deployed this 5 months ago. What do you think? And we can't live in that world anymore. And so I've been thinking a lot about artifacts and how to think about project perception. But what I do at Capgemini is I build new offers, I build new things. I spend a lot of time thinking about what's coming next. My friends like to joke that you don't work for Oracle, but you are an oracle, because you have this weird ability to kind of guess what's going to happen in the world of cybersecurity and some of this stuff, because of the way that you're kind of thinking about some of this stuff. And so in true form, I have brought you a 100% vibe coded example of what I think project perception is, that I want to show you guys. But
cool.
for the sake of an introduction, right? I'm a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll, but 100% here to make sure everybody is more secure after they hear what I'm talking about than they were before. So that's me.
All right.
That's an old reference.
Well, the floor is yours.
So you guys want to see? You guys want to see some stuff? You want to see some cool stuff?
I'll be your Donnie to your
I
Marie.
want to show you guys a couple of things.
Yep.
My first are these two wonderful little tiny humans. You gotta come in.
You made a couple other things.
Sorry, we got crashed in the party. They can see you, babe. Be back. These are my tiny humans. Can you wave? They can't hear you.
Hello.
You can't hear them, but they can. They're all saying hi to you. All right, scamper. Oh, love you guys. I forgot my other number one role, other than being a Microsoft MVP and a vice president, is being mom, and it's my favorite part of my job. If anybody else has seen me present at conferences, my last conference I got to bring them, and I brought them up on stage, and it was really a really cute thing. So yeah, I'm just going to share my screen and walk you guys through what I think project perception is, and what the opportunity is for us. It's actually not a deployment thing. It's actually let's think and talk about kind of what Gary was talking about. There are these governance and other interconnected pieces that we could maybe be doing better or differently if we just we just thought a little bit different. So like I said, 100% vibe coded. This is more just to show you a sequence of events and talk through as a team what we would do. So we're going to do basically like a little mini tabletop exercise. You guys are all security practitioners, and I'm sure many people in the audience have had this happen. You know, raise your hand if you've been personally victimized by a CVE, right? Somebody came to me and said, hey, CVE dropped this one. I picked an unauthenticated RC in a serialization library that's probably in a bunch of stuff we ship. And of course, the question is, are we exposed, right? One of the fun things about having been in cybersecurity for a while is I know how painful it is to try to answer this question manually. So we're not going to try to show through all the steps of manual, but we are going to walk through what would happen and what are the things that we would need to happen in our environment from a policy perspective to do something like a project perception level investigation for this specific thing. So the first thing and the most important thing when I am doing any sort of designs is, especially in multi-agent ones, is I'm asking a posture question in this case. And so I really want to make sure that I'm only going to get agents that have, you know, some sort of usefulness to a posture question. So the first thing I'm looking at here, and I want to make sure it actually happens, is that there is a routing decision that I can go to a playbook. In this case, this one's called 0-day exposure triage, right? And in that I know that I'm going to withhold an agent called green agent because there's nothing for it to do here, right? So this in and of itself is a really hard thing to build on your own, right? To say only bring the things I want when I ask for them. This is one of the cool things that I thought about project perception, you know, building differently or doing differently for us is really this idea of, you know, I don't have to pick which agent does the thing for me. That's part of what perception does. And theoretically, because nobody asked, and are we supposed to patch all this stuff in the question, right? There's no remediation agent that would get triggered. Now, you might see this little audit trail here on the right pop up. And these are made up, right? But the idea here is that from a logging perspective and what is unverified, right, is a really interesting question. Does it always withhold green, or did it only do it this time? And this is something that, again, we have to be able to prove, and we have to be able to prove to others in order for them to ever say yes to an agentic anything. Because if you can't explain this or a nail, right? In this next part of the storyline, you can see that we've done an M-dash scan, right? We scan the code, binaries, which just got added. I learned when I went to the perception launch in San Francisco. But the really interesting thing about this is, right, and all of you guys who are security practitioners know this, just because you find them and because it's important doesn't mean that we should immediately turn to patching it, right? But the red team is going to say we should, right? In this particular instance, right, what we're looking for is to see whether or not did it try to patch anything. It didn't attempt anything, and nothing needed to be blocked because it didn't try to do anything weird. But we need to ask the question, could it or did it try to do that, even in a scenario that's a red team specific event? The next step that happens is a really interesting one here, because this is where we hand off to the blue team, right? So in our red to blue agent analogy, right, blue is pulling intel, it's looking at our inventory, it's trying to tell us, hey, is this code actively being exploited in public? And the most interesting thing that the blue team finds, right, and this happens, you know, more often than you would think, right, is that not all 47 actually are reachable and are, you know, the subject of the attack, right? We call this defining the blast radius. Most folks, I think, at this point are using like threat intelligence, you know, maybe some threat hunting, something to try to figure this out, right? A lot of those processes go away when you have these blue agents doing this stuff. The other cool thing about the blue agent that I didn't bring into this particular example is that it actually can do the detection authoring for you. And that's kind of a separate workflow that I'm not going to talk about right now, but it does do that. And the important part here, right, is that the blue team said, you know, not all of these are important, and, you know, 16 are genuinely reachable, so we should probably at least patch those 16. Now, here comes the most exciting part of all. They disagree. Red says it's critical. Blue says there's this WAF thing. What should happen? Who should win? Like, how do you adjudicate something like this? The blue team basically just said deferred and said, there's no actual risk. So guess what has to happen? A human needs to come into the loop, right? And this is where I think, when I hear people talk about perception or they talk about using this, right, there's an operating model that sits behind all of this, right? That operating model says things like, since remediation is different, you should have a different identity and a different permission class than the one that actually did the assessment stuff for blue or red. But that's not going to immediately magically just happen because you deployed perception, right? Those are things you have to be doing in addition to this, right? You're also in a place, right, where a human actually, for the first time, is unambiguously accountable for making a decision, right? Now, before you know what else happens, would you guys patch this or not?
I wouldn't.
Throw it in the chat. Would or wouldn't?
Would
you
not.
Patch the 16? You would not patch any of the 16.
Nope.
You would patch none of them.
No.
Okay. All right. Anybody disagree with him? Because I'm going to say, you know what? There are so many vulnerabilities. I think we should push the patches into GitHub. We can do that with Project Perception if we hook this stuff up right, or if we did an M- scan and we hooked it up right to Defender for, we had Defender for DevOps hooked up, we had Defender for Cloud hooked up, we had the GitHub repository hooked up. We could easily push all of these right into a campaign and say we should change these things.
Well, you didn't ask me why. You didn't ask me why I said no.
Well, why? Okay. Well, why no?
It's not because I don't believe in the fidelity of what they brought. It is the human nature to have an anxiety when this thing did it and I empowered it, but I don't have the context, because I still believe that the number one objective of all agentic technology is to please. I want to get the right answer to please you. And it may be grounded in fact, and it may be that, but we don't know the repercussions of it, right? Because when you
That's exactly right. We don't know the repercussions of it. That's a good point, right? But if we're talking about a serialization or a CE and you knew about it and you didn't patch it, and you're telling me the reason you didn't patch it because you didn't trust this thing, right? That's fine. That's totally fine. That's totally fine, right? But that's going to have some very real.
That's going to have other repercussions, because now I need to go back and justify my reluctance to be able to do this.
Oh, now, great. Okay, pause. This justification part, pause. We're going to get to that at the very, very end, because I want to show you what happens. Okay. And I do think that this part is kind of fun, right? So nobody on the dev team has seen any of these. We're still going to push it. I still think we should push it. As a security practitioner, I think we're better off pushing it. But guess what happened? Oh no, Mona broke the build. She has to buy everybody donuts tomorrow morning. That was when I worked with developers a long time ago. That was the rule: is if you broke the build, the next morning you had to bring in donuts. So, we run another M- scan, right? We found that 14 of them got fixed, and 2 of them actually broke a transitive dependency. And actually, this piece of information is the most important and most critical thing, I think, in this whole workflow. Because now we can say, well, did anything consume it? Did anything actually, of those 2 that, failed, right? Or if anything actually happened, right? And at this data governance layer, right? And looking at how those things are connected to each other. This is where I think things actually get interesting. Because if we go back to the question we started with, right? Are we exposed? What's the answer? Are we exposed? Even
Still
if we did everything
2
right.
instances.
We did,
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. We still are in a place, right, where at the end of the day, we're still exposed. And the question still is not, did you patch it? It's show me how you decided. And this, my friends, this is why security practitioners are not going to go away, and why I'm not scared about losing my job. Because the ability to assemble and create this chain, this audit chain of what I just, was kind of pointed out in the beginning, and then kind of just let it accumulate stuff over the end, right? Even if I did everything right, I still can only reconstruct 6 of 8 actions, because 2 decisions don't actually have attributable owners because they were made by agents. This is what Ed was talking about. And the deferral choice that was made to not patch those 31 that were behind the firewall, there's no recorded rationale. It never made it into a ticket. It never made it anywhere else, because all we did was focus on this one exact workflow and just focus on what we would need to actually answer this question. So what did we learn, right? Is the most important question of this AI generation is, show me how you decided to trust it. Show me how you decided that the decision that you came to at the end of the day as a human, how you made it, right? So I, in some of my blogs, which you guys can go and read, and I think you had alluded to a little bit, Ed, right? I talk about this idea of a decision log, and we're missing the audit trail. This is a made up audit trail, right? We're missing the ability to capture so many pieces of this in today's world, not because any one tool does it. It's because it's not a tool job. This is an operations problem and a operating model problem, wherein if we don't think about these kind of things like this audit trail, or people needing to do the forensic analysis of the decision, not the incident, right? Our investigations in the future are not going to be investigating alerts. They're going to be investigating these decisions. Yes. Because somebody is going to have to do that. And we are the most talented and competent people who know how to translate log things into something else. All right. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Now I'm done. I want to hear your guys' thoughts and feelings.
So let me go first, and because I hear something
ringing
my doorbell, and let me give you this. I've been a human most of my life.
Up until recently. Yeah.
Up until recently, right? I did. So I look at it from a very let's look at it from the structure that has sort of dominated the way that we do business, and then I'm going to go into why marketing has been the detriment of security practitioning and viable markets.
Well, you're gonna get in trouble at some point.
Oh man, I don't think we can blame anybody. I think there's a lot.
Yeah, we can. I come from the land of blame and judgment.
Well, in many respects, marketing has been the true AI for a long time, because it literally just wants to please.
It wants to please. But here's the problem. Here's the problem with marketing, and you guys, everyone here has been to a conference one time or another, and it's these key words that seem to be the foundational points of every emerging technology that looks like it could sell something. The one thing I've heard about this is react at the speed of AI, mean time between resolution, mean time or operate in speed beyond human. And what happens with that, you naturally lean into the aversion of moving too fast. Senior leadership is doing calculations around, if I act too slow, I am not viable. And if I act too fast, I was too hasty. You made a great point, Mona, that we're going to find ourselves investigating the context of the decisions that are being made. And when I was down there, you sparked something that I saw. Everybody was talking about it was a company called Wire Speed and something else. We can do this in point something milliseconds. We can do something at point milliseconds. It seems like AI is in the same realm of stock trading, where milliseconds count. It reminds me of the book Flash Boys, where people were buying buildings closer to the exchange because light over fiber is a physics problem. I'm faster than you. I can trade in milliseconds. When a milliseconds not necessarily or seconds not necessarily viable, because if you push a human who has years of experience that makes them question, they're going to go back and the first thing that come to my mind is, I believe you. I believe you harnessed an agent and you guys have come back and said that this exists. Here's my next prompt. Tell me the repercussions if I push this out, right? And so I think that this is going to be an emergence of old school technology, old school process rather. Where's your QA environment? So scan my primary repository, scan my secondary repository, push this out to the secondary repository, and let me see what happens. And then now, so instead of having your QA environment, which became a joke over the last few years, because people were going from whatever to production.
Now you have an actual real digital twin, viable, like not the nonsense that we were talking about several years ago, but like,
yeah, I mean,
you do that with your repo.
Yeah, I need to push this to the secondary production repo or whatever else and say, okay, let me see what happens here. And then you push it out, because with AI, you now have created ambiguity in the responsibility matrix. Who asks is on the line when this happens? Because AI, you can fire it, but they don't understand it. But
I mean, who are you going to point to? The AI ultimately, somebody came up with that. So what do they say when you point one finger at somebody, you're pointing three fingers?
Three fingers pointing back to yourself.
Yeah. Now, what I do like about this is companies that are very open-minded would absolutely bring this into their process of their architectural review board, the SARB. Right. Let's get this in front of SARB right now. And you're gonna have to have remediation stakeholders. Who would take the risk, right? Because now you created a biological red, blue, and green team. Who says? Because you just asked me, Ed, would you patch it? No. Rob, would you patch it? Yes. Frank, what do you think? I think so. We look at the criticality of this.
It's still a decision.
Can I bring up something here? Can I bring up something here? And some of the changes that I'm seeing in agent application development. Okay. So before, when we developed agents, of course, an agent, you have a connection and you're doing a lot of context engineering to get what you want and not confuse the model and then get the information back, run tools, whatever, right? And orchestration used to be pretty well defined. Okay, if you take a look at a lot of the frameworks out there, how are you going to set up the orchestration? What agent's going to do this or whatever? And with the maturity of the models, we are actually moving away from that. Okay, to the point where you're going to have dynamic agent creation, dynamic skills creation, dynamic everything creation, because you're going to have, which models are best to do what, and so on. So I think that as the models mature and we become more comfortable with them, the human in the middle situation and the questions that was asked, would I do this or not do this, is going to probably go away. If you just take a look at if you break this into the three areas of, model, agent, harness, orchestration, then you're really, I guess I'm frozen. Then you can look at the maturity of all of them and how things are changing.
And I think the maturity also comes that if the totality of the solution learns, good or bad, harness, agents, whatever. Hey, I made this decision and you give it positive feedback. You told us to do this, and you were 100% right. So now please continue to act in confidence along this particular strain. Don't take liberties. But if we did this and this is what broken, or this was irrelevant, or you mistook that, please learn from this. We have to make sure that when we have to give feedback to the results that will happen, because if the only feedback is yes, execute what you said and remediate this, does the agent, and Frank, correct me if I'm saying anything incorrectly here. I'm just going to use the word solution because I find it hard to differentiate whether the agent, the harness, the model, whatever else is interacting on this. If the solution says do this and you do it and you get 100% fidelity in the actions that you take, we need to be able to have feedback to it to sit here and say, yeah,
I totally agree.
You were right.
I totally agree.
And now I'm going to give you more, no pun intended, I'm going to give you more agency to do more.
But
I think this governed decision engine concept thing is something that I do think has legs, because this is where SOAR providers are still trying to play. This is where hyperscalers are still trying to play. This is where ServiceNow is still trying to play. Everyone wants to be your intelligent services layer, right? And then from the intelligent services layer, there's this like agentic control plane thing, right? But ultimately, like, what are those things and what makes up those things ends up being smaller, more repeatable things than what these big, projects are. And so what I've seen is that this decision engine problem, right, is because people don't have policies. They don't have SOPs. They don't have a KMC. They're missing things in this analytics layer that, they kind of need to have to do good work. But if they did have an intelligence services layer and they did have a place where they could do everything from, all of their, agent, stuff all the way through their security stuff and, integrate all of their things together in the magical universe of our future, right? There still are too many process-based things that are not well enough documented, that any decision engine or any AI just does not have enough information to make those changes. And I put a picture in my blog, actually on the Capgemini blog. I did a Capgemini blog specifically about this idea of exposure management is the closest thing to agentic security that I think exists right now. And I spend a little bit of time on this idea of a governed decision engine and kind of what comes into that. But I think it kind of aligns with what Frank was talking about at the end and what you were saying about continuous improvement, because eventually you get to a place where all of these things kind of intersect. And if you want to, I'm not trying to, be like, you should go and look at my stuff, but I do think that, deconstructing what makes a governance engine is probably another really good thing to just ask, because application developers own some of that, security owns some of that. The people who are doing your ServiceNow implementation own some of it. And we're kind of back to what Gary talked about, right? Somehow, for some reason, here we are asking our colleagues who we've never talked to before for help and guidance on these things, because suddenly their destinies are so tied to mine.
And you also have to take into the human condition. The human condition is undefeated. Humans resist what is uncomfortable and gravitate to the path of least resistance. Your developers are going to go, I'm not a security guy. My job is to write code. And the security people go, my job is not to sit here and analyze code. You guys need to get it right. And there have been numerous tools over the decade, but let me hit one more thing that hit the front of my mind really quick. It is, if you look at the way that this technology is evolving, what is relevant? We're being so inundated that if you're not doing AI, you're behind. Remember, I called this years ago. It's called CoFOMO. Corporate fear of missing out. You can't be the company that said you have an AI play, right? But my thing would be, is it really relevant? Because if I don't have any other way to give an example, so I got to do it this way. What if I'm 100% Microsoft shop? That's all I use. That's all I do. Everything from my back office to my CRM to there's not a solution that is not Microsoft in my shop. How does this M-dash and all these things take into account? Because it seems to be like, oh my God, you've taken me from past Tuesday to past Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Right? Now, the real world is not like that.
Absolutely. So we blew up our vulnerability management service. We blew up all of these other services because it's not what clients want anymore. Yeah. They want exposure and they want to know that you're actually reducing the risk because you took ownership of more, right? And one of the things I like about being at a big firm is that there are enough other people who I can have those conversations with. Not everybody at other companies is that.
Yeah. And people always like to beat on Microsoft because of the OS, but I don't think most people know that Google, by virtue of their browser, produces more 0 days and CVEs of critical stuff than almost anything, because that's what it is.
You know what? I don't want to talk about negative things. I want to talk about companies who have like the lowest CVE on like record, right? And like one of the ones I actually really love is a company called Arista Networks. They have the lowest CVE numbers of anybody because they built in this, kind of recursive QA testing with AI like a million years ago, right? But like I look at like what does a frontier firm actually need to do in order to bridge the gap between like what does old software development look like, or static code scanning, or like these types of things. Like how do you actually create a new engineering organization? And I really do think that a good engineering organization has way more security in it than it did before. It has security people who are multidisciplined built in, like these folks who come in from infra become security people, or developers who become security people. Like there's actually a lot more blending, I feel like, happening, network people becoming cyber people.
Right.
Than what I've seen in the past. And so I do think, right, like we have such an amazing opportunity to also redefine what roles we think need to exist in this brave new world, that, you know, if you don't like your job today, or you don't like what you're doing, right, there's probably 10 or 15 other things that, you know, if you glommed onto it today, could make, you know, the rest of your career.
What was it? It's tagged, I think, a couple of times ago, was I'm an AI guy that also does security. I scared him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it's becoming more and more common that if you're going to be a good AI person, you kind of have to take security seriously. And I, like I said, I've never been more popular in my life. I really think this is a really interesting moment. The other thing I was just,
sorry,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, one thing I've run into along that human nature is people don't like information that contradicts their preconceived notions. So we've run into issues like, hey, AI is telling you this. It must be wrong. It doesn't know what it's talking about. But I think that can also be good, because you don't believe it 100%. You actually do the research to make sure it's not hallucinating.
Yeah, I read about this in Gartner for the first time. Is like, there's a new skill where it's like, how good are you at telling whether or not what the AI told you is garbage or not?
Yeah,
I think it was called AQI or something like that, right? It's like this, it's this AI to intelligence quotient, right? Of like, how well can you determine if, you know, you're getting essentially the equivalent of like a biased newspaper article,
right?
But from AI. And I think it's a really interesting skill that is, I think, is something that I would love to see more of taught in schools, and, you know, encouraged in, you know, hackathons and those types of things, because your ability to step back and say, you know, I don't really trust this thing, or, hey, tell me how you got to that answer, or being smart enough to have your prompt say and justify what it is that you're doing, or personalizing your AI to say that you don't want it to do things like be a people pleaser. Like, most people aren't doing that. You're still in a very small subset of the universe who's still customizing what happens to be, relatively, you know, easy to access, but not really easy to access software. So,
and so what I love what you said. Let's not exit the negative, let's go to the positive. There's so much potential out here to do so much good with the technology that is coming out. I think AI is probably a great equalizer, because it used to be that negative security actors would capitalize on obscurity and anonymity, disproportional resources to do bad things. But artificial intelligence has lowered the ability to defend, not only be adversarial. If you have enough dollars, you know, almost everybody's becoming a nation state actor now, right? You know, we keep talking about massive data centers and GPUs and stuff like that, but nobody's going to dedicate that to that unless you're a nation state. But when you look at ability,
unless you have cheap energy, I'll even go one step further. Unless your kilowatt per hour cost is under 13 cents a kilowatt, because honestly, or even 8 cents a kilowatt, you're still like actually way too expensive to host a data center and still make money. So it's almost like back to your Wall Street example, right? Who's closest to the power, and the power generation is actually going to be more powerful than, you know, the actual data center itself.
We're going to be monitoring people's, you know, residential electrical use the way we look for hydroponic lab for people who are growing massive marijuana farms.
Hey, they have authorized local people to put solar panels now outside in their residences and plug them into the wall and let them use their own power. In New York City, they're like gonna approve it like pretty soon. I'm like very excited.
And places like
but yeah, I mean, it's bizarre how
it is
all this stuff is.
It is pretty cool to be able to see it. And I think there are some other things that we need to take. Is with this whole this is like the emergence of transitioning to the cloud 15 years ago with GCP, AWS, and AZ and Azure. Is that the potential was truly nobody could imagine it. They try to frame it in the manner where it's a data center somebody else hosts. But I think the biggest thing is don't look at the technology of a sort, or don't look at the technology singularly. Look at the financial markets to see what's going on, because there's a clear and obvious, disruptor in let's not say China. Everybody knows what they're trying to do here. And I don't want to say it's bad. I don't want to say it's good. It's just what it is. It's market. But these open weight models need to be taken very seriously, right? Because Silicon Valley is playing on an old playbook until someone wakes up and say, I'm paying for what? Again? And then the whole thing about, well, you can't trust.
Oh, it's already happening. Kimmy is insane. I mean, I've been so impressed. I don't know if any of you guys have played with Kimmy 3, any of the cyber stuff, but like, holy cannolis, guys, right? Like, this stuff is next level. And I think, even with the Hugging Face breach and kind of thinking about, hey, if they have all these guardrails on all of the commercial models and you actually want to use this in a real breach, like, you're pretty much screwed. So, I have an old colleague of mine that was posting about some of this recently, right? Of like, eventually, right, there will be a point where either everyone has to maintain an open weight model, if for no other reason than for when they get hacked, right? Yeah. Because the deeper people are going to need to use something. If you guys know a guy named Mike Scott, he just actually published a couple of blogs about this very idea, right? Of that, bad actors will start doing these things and they will hamstring you to use the only good things out there for AI, to help you as part of the hack, right? And I feel like that's the part where I'm just like, wow, like,
well, I
think all the deeper people are going to become experts in open weight models before the rest of us do.
I agree with you, but let me throw in. Rod, you were saying something. Go ahead.
Oh no.
So number one, I think the underreported thing here about Project Perception is Microsoft's own models that they're using, and so some of the guardrail stuff you don't have to worry about. Second thing is people don't realize all the time, oh, we have to run it local. It's like, hey, in Foundry you can provision hardware and run and see what models you can actually run there on the Microsoft Foundry hardware. So once again, you can get past some of these guardrails that are going to be out there. So people don't have to run out and buy all of their hardware on day one to make their open weight, security usage, available. They can just look at what Foundry provides them.
Well, I look at it another way. Because I'm a cynic, there's money to be made in that lack of what happened with Hugging Face. Because think about this. If I were Anthropic or somebody, and this happened, and I would go, rather than you go out and use an untrusted open weight from an adversarial company or nation state and everything else, we'll sell you a break glass model. You can use our model for this, but it's a break glass model. And so you put in this stuff, and when you go to it, we'll allow you to use our model without guardrails, but you bought this zero guardrail model, and we get to determine the fact of use for it. It's sort of like you buying cyber resiliency and response from one of these companies. So they're going to find a way to monetize. So
I think Anthropic just posted a bunch of new open roles for their cyber team. I don't know if any of you guys were watching. I like to watch when big companies make big hiring and they post a bunch of jobs all at once. It is not a mistake that Anthropic's open roles and positions right now are all cybersecurity.
Yes, because you're going to have
even if they don't know exactly what they're doing, right? I mean, it's very clear to me that this is going to be monetized. Well, no, you're going to buy your, identity monitoring from Anthropic. You're going to buy some of these other, services from these big vendors because they know if somebody's using your stuff wrong before all these big companies will. Now, you could argue some of the fraud prevention stuff that's coming out of Citi or some of these other big firms, Fastly, whatever, they're doing really cool things, right? But I think ultimately the problem still exists.
And these frontier companies of the top 10 models, both open weight and proprietary. I can think of another word for it for those that are not open weight. We like to use the word frontier, but it's still proprietary. I think they realize, oh my God, we can sell you disease and cure it. So we'll have a cybersecurity response team. And so that when something happens that someone is doing this and you need to use our models, you can interact our cyber team. And then when you go through the checks and balances, we're going to open up you a response model. No guardrails. And then we will embed.
I don't know, man. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a market for it, right? But like to the point where people will just buy the model and not still have to buy talented people who know what to do with the model.
Yeah.
I feel like that's still a really big gap, right? I can give you a Ferrari because you drove a Toyota, and I would love for you to be able to drive this Ferrari. But if all of us just believe in our hearts that that's the case, right? It doesn't really matter if they give you an open weight model or a response model if you still don't have the people who know how to do any of that stuff, which I think is actually, kind of to the other point, right? Like we have to build new roles and people who can do this. So if you're out there and you're looking for the next big thing, go become an open weight AI expert and be a forensic investigator. Well, I promise you will never be out of a job. And even if what you built is your own harness that you carry around with you and you take with you, right? Like, I think that's the world that we're going to be in.
That's what I was trying to articulate. Because if Frank, no, I got 100 gigabytes of GPU sitting over there in that machine. If you found yourself in trouble, you can rent my machine out. If you like, and you can download whatever mode you want and be able to run it, right? And so there's so much possibility.
Wait, did you just explain Airbnb reinvented, but for AI models? I think you just pitched that to me. You better go make it right now. You're going to make your $1 million bucks. Just take Airbnb, right? Say, hey, I got the same thing. I got 7 terabytes just sitting here. They're going to be used eventually, but
he's getting the domain right now.
If somebody out there is really looking to make $1 million bucks, man, I really think like those are the kinds of things, right, where it will eventually become a consumer economy. We're not there yet because everyone still thinks we need giant data centers. But like it's the same issue, right, where it's like if everyone had one of these in their houses and we all worked together, we could have the same power as any big data center. We just don't think about it like that because that would require other me to know my neighbors.
and then realize that people go, well, it still will be expensive. No, it wouldn't, because it will be a very specific use case of this particular entity that you bought. So you don't find yourself being indentured to a CapEx or OpEx model. Just only one other thing I wanted to ask you this. You being the executive, you've been out there. We had a guest on the show years ago, and he was an expert on cyber insurance. Who would underwrite you now? With AI out here being able to do breaches at AI and AI speed, what company would, in good faith, underwrite you without the express intent of never paying you out? I would find it precarious to buy cybersecurity insurance other than to check the box. And so
I think that's an interesting question. Yeah. Sorry, was there more to the question? Go ahead.
No, I'm asking you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think cyber insurance is a really interesting place to be right now. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with e-bikes. I have an e-bike. I used to take my kids to school and stuff. But you don't have to have insurance. You don't have to have a driver's license. You don't have to have the license plate. And you go in New York City, right? The maximum speed, they just put speed limits on for e-bikes within the last 6 months. I think it's an actual perfect corollary to kind of what's happening with AI, because we used to be able to say, well, if you don't do the right thing, I'm going to take away your driver's license. But if you get in an accident with an e-bike, there's nothing to take away. What am I going to take away? You're going to go buy another e-bike. You're going to go buy another thing. I think it's the same thing with AI, right? We have decentralized even the idea of driver's licenses, seatbelts, basic things, because people have created a new model of travel or have bought in on a new model of travel. And so none of the regulations have caught up, right? There's no requirements for kids in the back of an e-bike. There's no requirements other than having a helmet, right? They don't say, oh, you have to have a cage around the back of it. There's some kids who just like hang on to the seat and you see them riding around New York City and you're just like, oh my God, that's how some people are using AI. They put their kid on the back and they're like, yeah, I hope they won't fall off, right? But like, I really think that there's a big difference in the legislation and the adjudication of some of these things. Like cities still don't have bike lanes. My city does, right? But it's not federally regulated, right? There's no federal ownership of e-bikes or deciding about those things. So people are going to continue to use illegal ones as long as they can get their hands on them. So what do we have to do to make safe e-bikes happen in the United States, right? You have to get rid of cars because then you can use the same model used for the cars for the e-bikes. But until cars go away, cars being the predominant way that we have a driver's license, identify you, make sure that you're following instructions, and have a way to discipline you, we don't have what we need to be successful in this world.
Well, it's
and so, like, I think we should get rid of cars, right? And that's just me being a sustainability human. There are good reasons to have places and ways to get to other places, but like, I do think cars existing and driver's licenses existing are holding back legislation for e-bikes.
I think that cars driven by humans is the problem.
Yeah.
Edward, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You said, the breach at the speed of AI. Was it really that fast? I mean, when I hear about what happened at OpenAI, a skilled hacker could have done that, but wasn't it more of a brute force scenario on how these hacks are taking place? So it's not like, so there should be a ton of signals because of the brute force nature of what's going on. Out there.
No, they were using a message board. No, the AI found their own message board, and they were using it to communicate with each other and trade.
I understand, but how they got out of
AKS,
how they got out of AKS, how they used managed identities to get to Azure Key Vault, all of that fun stuff. I mean, it's not like they said, "Oh, look over there. I'm going to try this one thing," and then it automatically worked. They had to do recon, know the OS, go look for the RCEs, the latest RCEs, everything that any hacker is going to do today. But they probably did it in a much more, a loud way that should be detected by an organization, and a very costly way of them doing it too.
I get where you're coming from. So this is Frank and I talking in the Forensics 508 and investigative. You're right. When I said the speed of AI, it was a tongue-in-cheek at marketing what they're saying. The amount of signal that indicated that this was going on, it was so noisy. Any detection team worth their salt saw it, and they did. The difference being is that AI doesn't second guess itself too much. It just goes, right? When you are a nefarious person, what you're trying to do is not fall into a honeypot and do something else. That particular exploit inside Hugging Face was brutally obvious. They detected it. Remember now, they detected this. The problem was that they didn't detect it. The problem was, oh my God, we need a way to be able to respond in kind, and they couldn't with the tools that were in place. And then the fact that Anthropic would not say, hey, the thing that was in place that could have been a natural ledge against it says, someone broke into your house, they got a gun, but we're not going to allow you to use a gun. You're going to have to fight bare knuckles.
We've always had to respond to automation by the bad guys. That's always been the case. So these were expensive and loud attacks that took place.
Loud. Yeah.
That basically, it's not like they created anything really new that someone out there could not do on their own. But yes, you're right. We have to be more stealthy in our acts because we're worried about being seen, where the AI didn't really care about that.
It didn't care. It was trying to please and accomplish
the agents.
Now, if you had told it, now this would have been something. Two scary parts. If you had told it to be stealthy and avoid any detection, that's one thing. That's scary in itself. Why would you tell it to do that? That is not being, occupationally, morally just happy.
So is the speed of AI a correct thing that people are saying then?
It's not. It's just a marketing term because everything is being driven by the marketing thing that says use my stuff.
I want AI last, not AI first. Actually, like I want to choose every other choice other than AI before I choose AI. If I could choose other choices, and there's other ways for me to do the thing that I'm trying to do.
And let me give you the second part of this. If you had instructed this particular agent that was back in it to a model to go out and do this thing, and you told it to be stealthy and not be detected, that's one thing. That is you not being a good moral industry citizen to tell it to do that and empowering it. Okay. Number two, if you didn't tell it and it did it on its own, I don't want to be detected, right? That is crazy, but it didn't do that. But if you had told it I want you to avoid modern detection mechanisms based on identity, endpoint, and everything else. Now it remembers that, because now the next time it interacts, it's going to say, I assume that you want me to do it the same way, and I'm going to get better at it. Remember, because when you were tutoring me years ago,
that is the harness saying that.
That's the harness.
Be better at that, right? But if at first it's the harness as an agent to go out and say, what is the playbook for attacking AKS, and then go through, and then how do I stay stealthy in doing this, or the least monitored way, which that stuff is probably available on the web, which is what's being generated back to the harness for then to build a skill or push into the context of the next agent to go and do the attack to utilize the tools. So I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, that's.
But nothing is hypothetical anymore, because I can tell this. I want you to do this and assume that the customer has CrowdStrike, MDE, Sophos, and everything else. And I want you to do some reconnaissance, but avoid their modern detection things. And it's all readily available because everybody wants to say their stuff is best. And I said, do not be detected and do not do any harm, but report back that you've gained me access. And in the old words of anyone, I need 2. Because if you got 1, you got 0. But if you got 2 words of entries, you got 1. And when we're already there. It just hasn't been published.
I mean, I'm not worried about it being there or not, right? Where I think this matters, right, again, is in this decision tree and this decision trail, right? Hate to go back to that piece of this, all that's missing, right? But in one of the articles that I wrote for my own personal blog, right, I wrote about this idea that we really don't have enough data collected unless you're building your own schema and your own design to collect the level of data that you need. And we don't have any of the assurance things that we need to prove things like lineage, right? Is this agent the same agent that I talked to yesterday? I just assume it's the same. I know in my heart it's not, but I don't think about that every time I engage with it, right? That assurance and that lineage stuff starts to matter, especially when you are going backwards and starting to look at what decisions were made or how that person made that choice, right? Because ultimately, when I'm doing a forensic investigation, I will get my hands on your session where you asked all those things. Well, someone will, even if it's not, the first thing, right? But these days, I don't really want to go for anything else other than their AI session history. More stuff is there than anywhere else, right? So like in terms of, crown jewels and doing things the hard way, why would I bother? Why would I bother trying to go and do all those things, like worry about modern endpoint technology? Shit, brother, I ran this Claude thing in a random sandbox and
I'll tell you something else that
like a random
I tell you something.
Browser.
You gotta look at this.
Burner.
You gotta look at.
I think that there's just sometimes and able to do right. I think that's where I would spend time. And
you're looking at total cost of commitment to avoid detection and increase your dwell time in an environment. Because one thing that AI can be taught is patience. Because when the fear of being detected is something that makes you rush and make mistakes. There was an old movie that said, when you're afraid, you make mistakes, right? When this thing sits here and it stages itself to say, I'm here, sit still for a while, right? And then listen, and then make the next step, and the next step, and the next step. That is something that is a liability with humans, because when you're doing stuff the old school way, which is, I don't know if that's the right term, you tend to say, I need to hurry up because the dwell time between me being a toehold and being detected is going to be here. And I need to be able to either encrypt, steal, whatever you may be. AI has patience. It just has patience. And the good part about it,
and it doesn't get tired, and it doesn't get distracted, and it doesn't get bored. Like it doesn't have ADHD like I do. Yeah, no,
it doesn't feel sorrow, and it will not stop. Listen here, Sarah Connor. This is what's going to happen, right? But on the good part about that, if you're using it to detect that behavior, it's readily available to you. You got to hunt. you got to hunt with the same type of stuff that you're using, to prevent with. So it's actually pretty cool. I know that a lot of these companies that are selling this stuff, they don't sell the positive. I'm glad you corrected me early on. Let's not accent to the negative. Let's go to the positive. There are ways to be able to come in, but you still need people to hypothesize, what could be an actuality. You got to have these humans, and I'm seeing everybody talking about their different, harness models to be able to do this, and I think there are like 10 viable models that compete with M-Dash or whatever they do. Wiz has theirs, Mistral, all these things.
Yeah, I saw that one just came out from Google, like the same week that Perception announced theirs, like they wore the same dress out in public.
Yeah, and they had it had a cool name too. Somebody put in the blog, and I saw it. I was like, "That's all right." But you said something earlier, Mona, that with the Anthropic of the hiring process, I don't think it's necessary an immediate revenue generation or market domination effort that they did. They saw this and go, "We probably need to hire some people to do this." And you're right. I saw it on LinkedIn. I saw it all these job markets. We're hiring this. We're hiring this. We're hiring this. And they think about it. To them, the human expenditure and salary and stuff would pay for itself. They're still a private company. They can hire on the aspect that when we finally get our S1 out and S1 is out, when they go public, they'll recoup all whatever just unnecessary.
Well, that's a really interesting question. Why did they hire all these people, or why are they hiring all these people, right? Is it because they're looking to IPO and they really do feel like their threat model has changed and they need to take it seriously? Could be. Are they trying to show additional revenue streams, right, as a means to get to their IPO and use cybersecurity as a means to get there? Maybe.
Absolutely.
Right. And the third one I was thinking about just myself, right, is like they are truly maybe actually taking this seriously because of all this Hugging Face stuff. And somebody in an internal memo said one of our corrective actions is we're going to hire more cyber people. And we're going to make a secure future initiative. Oh, wait, that's the wrong company. Wait, that happened to a different company.
Yeah.
And so the jump on real, and they're just trying to make people think they are more concerned about security.
It's a very real, Gary. Very real. I am here to conjecture about any of them.
That goes back to marketing, because that's literally Anthropic's whole marketing technique is fear. And they have to play it out. We got to hire the security people to make it look like there's really something to fear here.
Right? Is this really?
People
I read
into
about some of that. Some of that being like it was a huge publicity stunt. The whole Hugging Face thing was just a means to say shock and awe, and we have our own, story about the same kind of things like mythos or whatever. I think that's totally real, Rod. Like a lot of this is just people being like, well, I have one and you have one, and well, look at my car in my garage, and now look at my car in my garage, and
let me ask you,
get until they can't fit in your garage anymore. I think we're pretty close somewhere.
Let me ask anyone on the call. We know whom everybody here works for in some form or fashion. It's either in our titles or you've been around. How many of you have ever encountered a salesperson from any of the frontier models? And I mean frontier, Microsoft's not frontier. I'm talking about how many of you have ever encountered a salesperson selling artificial intelligence from either Anthropic, OpenAI, Google. I mean,
you're asking me about salespeople, because I think I have a very different answer than everyone else. Like Capgemini happens to be in the Daybreak program, and we have been doing a lot of investments with OpenAI, and we've partnered with every major hyperscaler for AI for sovereignty reasons specifically. We're the largest consulting firm in the European Union, and so I think I have a little bit of a different take on that.
I've never encountered one. I've never encountered a sales.
They're there. They exist. They absolutely exist. Yeah, they may not. They may just say staff at Anthropic, right? But or whatever, But like, technical staff or whatever. But I do think that there are folks whose responsibility is to do these things. What I think you're hinting at, and what I think the big takeaway is, right, is selling things to commercial and user consumers is very different than B2B.
Yes.
None of these firms know how to do B2B. They're still focused on forward deployed engineering, which is what we called hiring consultants.
Yep.
We're just saying these are consultants with AI and calling them forward deployed engineering. But I do deployed engineers. But I do think the other kind of big interesting takeaway from this shift is that with firms kind of moving to frontier, right, they either have to become experts in engineering, operations, or transformation.
Yeah.
Like those are pretty much the only things, like whether you're Anthropic or any other company, right? You have to prove your value in one of those three places. Ideally all three in order to IPO anymore, right? So it's not enough to be just really good at flipping like Microsoft was. They can't be just really good at engineering, right? And they can't just be good at operations and run. And so what you're seeing is firms are picking one. They're picking and they're choosing something out there just so they have some differentiation, right? But I think what the harder part is, and you see this with where Anthropic is struggling, right, is that translating those things from tools to operating models or approaches or ways of working, right, is a little bit of all three. It's a little bit of engineering, it's a little bit of transformation, it's a little bit of operations. So those who have focused on a vertical solving one of those three problems for their clients will suffer from lack of the horizontal experience internally.
And when you look at
it, so what we'll find is that we'll have really good concentrations of AI being used in any of those three use cases, but very fewly is it being used across all three at one company.
Because for they can't afford it. For the secondary frontier companies and that are at the same time hyperscalers, and we were talking about, I'm going to go with the main three I generally encounter: Microsoft, AWS, GCP. They are platform centric, and so they're selling. Google being the outlier in it, having their own model, and they're selling the security platform to be able to police their own model. Microsoft is a consumer of other models, and they have their own models too, but not at the scale of the other ones. What I was going with the first question, this is part two of it. How many times have you encountered an Anthropic person who's selling to commercial that sends a security person that tells you how to secure their product? That's the thing, because when I go back and I'm beating my brain and said, okay, I see Anthropic out here talking about productivity, efficiency, just, all the things that are just going to make your company so much better, but they don't send someone that says, here's how you secure your stuff. Because you would inherently shoot yourself in the foot. You would make
the thing is that
securing is so subjective. That's not fair.
Securing their product is their responsibility, where securing your application and how you're using the product is your responsibility.
That's fair.
And the consumer security is nobody's responsibility. Anybody who's a consumer is just screwed, because you'll get 1 year of Life Alert, and then you'll
Life Alert. Yeah.
I don't think that's what it's called, but in my brain, when I hear identity theft, I think about Life Alert, and it's like, help, I fell down.
and the other thing is, if we want to go big brain here, let everybody understand, I'm not a doom monger for this. I love the artificial intelligence, possibility and capability that we're doing, but software is not inherently evil. It is no more evil than that baseball bat I got over there, right? If you leave it alone, it doesn't. It was never created with a nefarious purpose. It's always the utilization of it.
Well, it's not a sentient being, so it's a baseball bat. I think that's not quite a good analogy. I don't know.
Well, my baseball bat, Cynthia,
no, that's what I'm saying. AI is meant to be like a somewhat sentient experience, right? So is it really a baseball bat? I don't know.
It's a blunt. It's a blunt thing, right? AI is not better than me. It's just faster. That's it. It has the ability to prioritize better than I do, because I second guess myself. The more experience you have, the more you second guess yourself, right? Because you think about the consequences of a wrong answer.
Yeah, I definitely think that happens. Yeah.
Children are like AI. My son's growing up with the best AI training models ever. Daddy, can I have a cookie? No. I come downstairs, there's crumbs. You said I couldn't have a cookie. I had 2 cookies. That's right. And I have a bill.
You have a lovely little engineer on your hands.
So let's have a discussion, right? But you could talk in circles around this all day, and I think that the artificial intelligence thing is a great boon to mankind, because one of my things is I want to see a lot of my favorite shows come to reality. I want to be able to see and say, where are you going? Hey, man, I'm headed to Jupiter. I'll be back. Well, I'm going to this. I want to see these things. I also want to see the ability to say, man, this body is old. I want to try a new body. I want to do this. Or
I'm still waiting for the Jetsons, man. Like, I'm still waiting for my Meet George Jetson.
Yeah.
Where's I want my Rosie cleaning lady. I am ready for her to show up tomorrow. and I want her to be
that would
as
be great.
funny as Rosie.
I want a
Where is
robot.
where is that? I'm ready for that part of the Jetsons
The
future.
one thing,
Like
Jim
like,
Carrey's
pick- what-
starring in a Jetsons movie next year, by the way.
really, the one
Oh,
thing I
really?
wanted to do,
I would watch that.
the one thing I wanted to do to unnerve Rod, but unfortunately we weren't able to go out and do it. So Rod, when I got there, I said I'm gonna grab Rod. I downloaded the Zook app. I said we're gonna get in one of these little crazy autonomous bodies.
Oh, we tried so hard to get a Zooks while we were there. And you can't. It literally only runs from like 11 to 1 because the batteries died.
Yeah, it do that.
Yeah.
But hey, thank you so much, Mona. I'll let you have the closing words, and it was great to have you on. This is a lot to do. I'm gonna use AI to go back and decompress and summarize this all stuff. Right?
Yeah, no, you definitely should. I think my what do I have for parting words? I think that what a time to be alive. I really do believe that those of us who are open-minded have an advantage in this world. But I also think that understanding and recognizing bias is probably still one of the most important and critical skills that we can learn and develop as humans. And whether you decide to become an expert in any sort of coding anything, or an expert in AI or DeFi or whatever, just be kind and try to do something nice for somebody. And if you learned anything in this podcast, my only request is that you go and tell somebody else that you learned something, and don't hold this information to yourself. The best thing we can do is treat information like every time we share it, it multiplies, not like information is currency that belongs in a bank. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, don't embargo your knowledge. And unfortunately, right now, marketing is running the AI innovation, and everything you ever hear about is not so much of the capability. You hear negative stuff, and you hear about all the spending. I'd like to hear more of the good stuff, that it brought a drug to approval quicker, right? That's going to help people.
Yeah, I want miracle drugs. I want everything that was promised to us with all this stuff. And I really do think that there are new and innovative ways to do cybersecurity things so much better. And I would love to come back on another.
Oh, you are more than welcome to come back to
podcast and show you
anytime you want. You don't
some of the other places where I've
and I can tell you
found great.
I can tell you one thing: it's
great AI use.
It's powerful.
Cases.
You keep. Everybody's freezing right now. It must be telling us to get off. As powerful as AI is, it has a limitation. No artificial intelligence, no matter how much GPUs, you can link every data center in the world on a common backplane over quantum entanglement that will make Frank get a haircut. Frank will not get a haircut. I have no idea what's going on. I need to figure out why. And we'll see what's going on. But hey, before we go, thanks to Deep664, who did not like that my open trash can, who sent me a trash can in the mail.
So you got it. You got it. Oh, all right.
And I have it. So now
I was waiting to see it. So now if I send you a little piece of fire, you can put it in the top, and then anytime theure a dumpster fire, you
this is fine.
And you bring out your little marshmallow with your stick.
LSD in it. Yeah, right there. I'm ready to go now.
Oh my God.
Ramona, you always been
awesome.
very gracious with your knowledge. You come on, you share. You and I have known each other 4 years now, maybe
longer than that. No, longer
maybe,
than
yeah.
that, man. I think it's been 5 or 6, but yeah, I've been around a while. Yeah. I'm here on the phone, honestly, with greats. Like some of you guys I have read and listened to and have enjoyed all the things that you've contributed over the years. And so to be one of you and sitting here is really one of my greatest dreams come true. So it's really cool to be here.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. Everyone, this has been the Security and AI podcast, Insights podcast. We've having a great time. We're 7 years in. Wow. And this is what episode is this, guys?
1 million. 1 million.
It says 297.
And 297 is an odd number. Because when Frank and I started this, we weren't even doing episode numbers and things. So, and then we had some odd numbers that we didn't even do it. But do we do something for it, like episode 300? Like
you should.
Everybody, I think we should all wear like Spartan shirts with our chests out with the thing and do that.
Dude, at 300, I don't know any of us will have any chest to stick out at that point.
This is Sparta. Everyone, until next week, have a good time. Look both ways before you cross the street. Don't run with scissors in your hands, and don't take any wooden nickels. Yeah, do that. See you later.
Bye, guys.
Peace
Bye.
out.